I guess while it's happening, I'll just explain what's going to happen. So you'll interview each other in the assigned pairs, and then everyone else is going to watch. And then after that, the feedback portion, we'll go over like what went well and what could have been better. And you'll be able to ask around 2 to 3 questions, averaging around like 5 minutes each. And the goal is just to get used to the interview process for the future when you interview your member of the community, and then also get to know your peers and get to watch them. Yeah.
So, and the other thing is that we do want you to start with that script that it actually migrated a little bit, just so you know. It's now on top of page 10, but it's still appendix 2. I got the appendix numbers right. So, do you guys know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. So, whenever. Oh darn you! Sorry, my computer's being wonky. All right, you guys go whenever you want to start. I'll catch up.
Okay, so we're gonna go in alphabetical order. That's okay. So do you want to go first?
Sure. I'm actually
interviewing John.
Oh, okay. Hold on. Give me 1 second then.
Okay.
Or let's not start with you because yeah, let's start next in row just because.
Bridget, let's go.
Hello, my name is Bridget Panzerin. Thank you so much for agreeing to participate in the interview for Community Voices. I'm excited to talk to you. As I think you know, I'm recording this interview so that I can focus on listening to you rather than taking notes. The recording will not be used by anyone but me or shared with the public without your consent. How would you like to be referred to during this interview?
Harrison is fine.
Before we begin, I would like to give you a little overview about what is going to happen. As you may know, we have interviewed many people in Oberlin to develop content for the Community Voices section of the environmental dashboard. Our goal is to learn how members of the Oberlin community are building a more sustainable, just, and resilient community. I'm particularly interested in you. That's like the topic of the interview, right?
Right, that's fine though.
Okay. I'm hoping that this can be more of a conversation than a formal interview. Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
Wonderful. I'm going to ask you 3 questions. Great. My first question is, as the weather warms up, have you started exploring more of the places downtown?
I would say definitely. The great part about Oberlin's campus is how like walkable it is. So there's many great restaurants and local businesses that I'm able to go with friends, or just if I have some spare time, just to go and see.
Are there any ways that you've been or plan on being involved with the Oberlin community?
So I always try and like, I'm pretty new to Oberlin, but I always try and get involved like with my music. I play jazz saxophone, and it's kind of a great way to. There are many great ways to get involved with the community, like just playing outside, and actually, since the weather's been nice, like many people in the jazz department have been playing outside around the Cole building. So it's been definitely a great way to create like interaction between the community and the college as well.
Very cool. Has your previous planning experience influenced your impression of water sustainability at Oberlin College?
Definitely. I'm able to see like many areas where I guess we could try and conserve more water. And also there's stuff that sometimes like lacks attention, and stuff that, you know, like where places where water could be continuously leaking, and that needs to be like addressed.
You've been seeing like a lot of that on campus?
Yeah, definitely. There's like some. There was actually just the other day in one of the buildings there was like a toilet that just kept flushing, and all needed is like a certain part in like the flushometer to stop it, and it just went all night. So just gallons and gallons of water. But
those are all of my questions. Thank you so much for this interview.
Good job. Harrison, do you want to go?
sure. Oh, I have to get my voice. No, I'm sorry.
That's fine.
All right. So hello, my name is Harrison. Thank you so much for agreeing to participate in an interview for Community Voices. I'm very excited to talk to you. As I think you know, I'm recording this interview so that I can focus on listening to you rather than taking notes. The recording will not be used by anyone but me or shared with the public without your consent. So how would you like to be referred during this interview?
Just Bridget.
Sure, sure. So before we begin, I would like to give you a little overview about what is going to happen. As you may know, we have interviewed many people in Oberlin to develop content for the Community Voices section of the environmental dashboard. So our goal is to learn how members of the Oberlin community are building a more sustainable, just, and resilient community. I'm particularly interested in the you, I guess you as the topic for the interview. I'm hoping that this can be more of a conversation than a formal interview. Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
Great. So I'm gonna ask you 3 questions. My first is, one second. Are there any ways you plan to use your experiences with journalism to promote sustainability?
Only very recently got into the journalism. I started taking the class this semester. So I'm very unfamiliar with like how to use it. But I've been getting into like articles about the dining halls, especially with like how like the indoor dining is like working right now. So I hope to like write more pieces about that just because like I think there's a lot of waste in the dining halls, especially with like grab and go, how we're just doing like the containers that just keep getting thrown away and not reused. So
Yeah.
I'm hoping to write more stories about the dining halls and like the flaws, and that's probably gonna have to tie into sustainability.
Yeah. And I noticed like you talked about Oberlin's like walkability. Do you think that that can play a greater role in promoting sustainability?
I absolutely think it does. I'm from like the big city of Dallas, Texas, so it's not a very walkable place, and you don't really get out unless you're driving in a car, which is just not promoting sustainability. But like here at Oberlin, I don't feel the need to like ever even like have a car necessarily unless I like really want to get off campus. Then there's like ways to carpool with people. I think the walkability, especially the decrease in car usage, is definitely going to promote sustainability.
Yeah. And I also noticed that you talked about being extroverted. Has that played a role in the relationships that you've fostered in the Oberlin community?
I don't really think it has. I like going to the hair salon quite a bit, and I like talking with the people who work there, and that's been very fun. But I also like, I feel like there aren't like places to just like stand around and talk to people in the Oberlin community. There's a new yarn store opening that has plans to like have like a bit more of like community and student like overlap, which I'm really excited for, and I think like the extroversion will help. So hopefully.
Great. Yeah, that's it.
Good job. And then,
Yeah. Okay.
I'm going to tell you, Anya, I've never actually been interviewed like for Community Voices,
Oh my
just
God,
so you know. So you're the first.
okay, I'll make sure to make it as good as it can be.
Right. I won't take notes while you're interviewing me. That would be
Oh my
rude.
God. Hello, my name is Anya. Thank you so much for agreeing to participate in an interview for Community Voices. I'm excited to talk to you. As I think you know, I'm recording this interview so that I can focus on listening to you rather than taking notes. The recording will not be used by anyone but me or shared with the public without your consent. How would you like to be referred to during this interview?
John is absolutely fine.
Before we begin, I would like to give you a little overview about what is going to happen. As you may know, we have interviewed many people in Oberlin to develop content for the Community Voices section of Environmental Dashboard. Our goal is to learn how members of the Oberlin community are building a more sustainable, just, and resilient community. I'm particularly interested about you. I'm hoping that this can be more of a conversation than a follow-up interview. Does that sound okay?
That sounds great.
Perfect. Okay. I'm going to ask you a couple questions. Here they are. Okay. So as someone who has lived in Oberlin for 27 years, how would you describe the mark of progress in the community's environmental initiatives?
Wow, that's a big question. I think what's been really interesting is sort of the back and forth between the college and the city of Oberlin, because both of them have their own sustainability initiatives, but they really play off each other. So Oberlin College developed a comprehensive environmental policy back in 2003. We were one of the first institutions to do that. And that made us recognize the degree to which what we could do at the college was really in part contingent on what the city was doing. And so we started exploring with the city, how could we could up the amount of green electricity we have in the college. And that got the city realizing, well, they had a real market for it and just thinking more about those issues themselves. And so it's been kind of like a back and forth. And I know some students are attracted to Oberlin because of our reputation on the environment, but as someone who's involved on kind of both sides, I really see this back and forth where we push each other in various ways, and sometimes, and in some ways, the city community is actually ahead of us, and sometimes we're ahead, and it depends on the thing. But it's been, I'm not sure I'm really answering your question, but yeah. Anyway, that's a response. You can follow up if I didn't answer your question.
No, that's totally fine. So I guess like knowing from like when you first came here as a student and to I guess now and when you're involved in a lot of like big environmental projects, what is I guess the most notable difference when you're just like walking down the street or just, yeah.
Well, I think you got like two questions there. One is one about like overall how things have changed, and the other is like what does it like physically look like? So maybe I'll try to answer both of those. When I was a student here, town-gown relations were pretty, I wouldn't say minimal, but very more segregated. I feel like the college and the community are so much better integrated now. And it may just be the lens that I look at it through, because I'm very involved in the community. I try to involve students in the community, but I think across the board, there's just a lot more engagement between college and community. So that's a way that it looks in terms of just, feeling like there's also just so much more going on in the city. This is a much more happening place than it was when I was a student here. I mean, if some student had stuck around here after they graduated, when I was a student, everyone would have thought that's a serious failure to launch. Whereas now it's like there's so much going on in this little community, which is such a neat microcosm for larger cities in many ways, that I think a lot of students do spend some time here after graduating and they've gotten so engaged in various different activities, whether it's Oberlin Community Services, sustainability initiatives, the Oberlin Public Schools, music, which is a really big thing that happens between college and town, that, I think it's just neat. Now, physically, it's a little hard to say because I'm not sure how much I remember and how filtered my eyes were. Yeah, I don't know. The physical part is harder. It pretty much looks like the same little town that it was when I was here. Yeah, I don't know what I can say. There are nice flower boxes in town that weren't here when I was here.
That's perfect. Yeah. If it's all right, do I have time for?
Sure, you do. We're good because we only have 3 people.
Okay. I guess, why do you structure your environment and society course around student organization and engagement? Is there a benefit in having a few student groups inciting change over like each individual inciting change? Like, I guess, is it more effective to do it in groups?
Oh, why are people working in groups? Is that your question? Or why do I emphasize community engagement so much?
You know what, let me ask one question at a time.
Okay.
I guess, yeah, why do you emphasize community engagement?
Oh, I think that is so important. College is really in American culture for certain socioeconomic groups. College is a rite of passage into adulthood, right? This is most people's first experience living away from home. And so to some extent, what you do during this first experience living on your own is going to set you off on what you do for the rest of your life. And I just feel like our opportunity to make change in this world, it is so contingent on our ability to engage with the communities around us. And so to me, that's one of the most important things I could possibly do, is just to sort of facilitate, get people more comfortable with that. A lot of students in the class have formed relationships with people in the community that they've then built on in their next years, especially a course that's so focused on mostly first and second years. It's like, even just like for a lot of people, it's just having that first conversation is actually a little challenging, and people, I think, often have a perception that there's a lot of town-gown tension. And, of course, there's always town-gown tensions of some sort. But I think once you get over this little barrier of getting to know a few people, talking with some people in the community, you realize how incredibly open this community is. And, different communities have different degrees of openness, but you will always find people in communities who are really enthusiastic about newcomers, who honestly want to listen to them, figure out what's going on, and be part of building a stronger community. So I just think that if I, as a faculty member, can be a little catalyst for starting you on that, then I've done good in the world.
Interesting, yeah, for sure. It is interesting to see, I guess, like even from my first semester to now, and the kind of classes that I was taking that were a lot more just like strictly lecture based, less project based, to see kind of how like slowly, I guess, I am getting more familiarized with like the organizations on campus. And I know a lot of them, of course, because this is like an environmental course, they are based on that. But it is like it is interesting to see how much more there is than I thought there was, and how easy it is just to do more. So yeah.
The other thing to understand too, building on your comment, is that there's a lot to be learned from people in the larger Oberlin community. And there's all education levels out there. There are people who have no college in our community, but almost everyone in this community has really important lessons to teach. And I think sometimes as a student come in, it takes you a while to figure out that there's a lot of different kinds of knowledge that people have, and all of those kinds of knowledge are really valuable. And if I can sort of break that down a little bit, because you're in this kind of, obviously you're going to a high pressure academic institution, but I think everyone needs to understand how much there is to learn from, the diversity of people out there in all communities, really. So yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for
No,
answering
it's
my
a pleasure
questions.
having a conversation with you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was really good. And everyone did really well, and I enjoyed hearing the conversations you guys were having. So we're gonna move to the feedback portion and just go around and just say what you learned from watching someone else interview or from your own interview.
Anyone want to start?
I can start. It was really cool watching you guys interview each other. I think it was like really cool how in depth both of you went into like your responses. Like I think that's really good from like the interviewers standpoint, just because you have more to like talk about or like go off of. I think it makes it a lot easier. So yeah, that was really nice. I like watching you like interview you, like felt like a lot more like personal. I don't know, like, I feel like I don't know, like there's something like the way like you were asking the questions, you're just like really engaged. You're like really excited to be here. I think I need to like channel more of that in.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Yeah, it was just a very good job with asking like the question.
I think I'm doing a really good job feeling comfortable and energetic especially when reading like the intro. Everyone seemed very engaged, even if you weren't very familiar with it. And I think Anya did a really good job of having follow-up questions for each response that John had. So it made it more of a conversation, and then also including your own personal anecdote was really good because it makes it more of a conversation as well. But you all had really good questions about like personal interests, like Harrison's plumbing and Bridget's journalism. So that was also really good.
Yeah, I'll add. I thought that Harrison and Bridget, I think both of you guys, I have kind of similar comments, which is that, and they've already been made to some extent. I felt like you definitely started the interview with a nice kind of relaxed reading of that, even though you were clearly reading it. I felt like it was, you put the other person at ease, which is nice. I felt like you also both had questions that were very personal, true of Anya as well, that like you had really taken the time to think a little bit about the other person, what they were interested in, and tailor your questions. And that was great. In these first interviews, there's just a lot of nervousness. And I felt like where you could have gone further is, and Harry had already mentioned this, is with follow-up questions. And I think partly that's about nervousness. You prepared your 3 questions, you asked your 3 questions. As you get more comfortable with this, I think you really want to try to find a way to be more in the moment, because I felt like in every one of the answers to questions, it felt like, oh, there's great space here for some follow-up. And in particular, follow-up that might push the interviewee towards saying things that are more about the Oberlin community. So yeah, my main comment for both of you is just follow-up, and obviously Anya had a lot of good. I mean, I felt like we were. I mean, I mean, obviously I'm pretty relaxed about the thing, so I'm not experiencing the stress you guys are on this, but I felt like it was a real conversation. I mean, I kind of, I mean, I know you were interviewing me, but I felt like you were engaging me in conversation. And I did like the way you were, it felt like you were sharing a little bit about yourself, but it was still like about my experiences and you were trying to learn more about them, but I felt that was good. But I will say in those first two interviews, I jot down a few like things that I thought were really quotable. So in the interview with Harrison, and these are just things I wrote down, so they're not transcriptions, so I'm not going to get the wording quite right. But here are a couple of quotes. Great part of Oberlin is how walkable it is. And I paraphrase this a tiny bit. As a saxophone player, there are great ways to get involved in the community, just playing outside. I mean, that would just be just like such a sweet little quote that would just really, speak to it. Originally, you actually said as a musician. Earlier, you'd say as a saxophone player, but it's fine to like adjust the quotes a little bit as long as you're respecting, like it really is the words. And I felt like using saxophone makes it a little bit more, it makes it even more specific. And if you could combine that with a photo of him actually playing the saxophone outside, that would be a killer little, connection there. And then for Bridget, I got one. I'm from Dallas, Texas, which is not very walkable. Here in Oberlin, I don't feel like I need a car. Also there was this another little clip where I didn't quite get, I would have liked to go a little bit further in like what you said, but I like talking with the people who work at the hair salon, which I love that. It's like connecting you with like a very specific business. And I think it could actually stand on its own. But if I had a little tail piece to that had like a little bit more about like what you're talking about or something that's a little bit more community on that. But I'm just saying there was rich material and everything that was said. I think it's not going to be hard to get some good content out of there. And I think you guys did a really nice job.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all. And I guess, I mean, you ended it kind of early.
Yeah, well, one thing I'll say about next steps, which we probably should have been saying to everyone, because the timing is pretty tight. What you're going to want to do is transcribe the interviews as quickly as possible. As it says in the description, and that goes right in that document that you're using, you don't need to transcribe the whole thing. You only need to transcribe sections that seem to have good content in them. So if there's like stuff that you feel like, even if you ask the whole question, if the whole answer is kind of like off of where you think you're going to get good quotes, don't bother. Just transcribe sections that you feel like might have good quotes, and then you're going to highlight those, and then we're going to move towards actually developing some content out of those. But the process on this first one is going to move really pretty quickly because we want this to be a complete example that people can use as input for their next interviews. But yeah, it's really fun talking with you guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Take care. Have a great rest of your day. So you're doing jazz studies.
Yeah,
That's
I'm
great.
double degree.
What are you majoring in the college?
I'm not sure yet, but hopefully enviro.
All right, cool. We have a lot of con students. It's a really good double major because you, among other things, well, there are a lot of con students who are interested in the environment, but it also, you like fulfill your distribution requirements because we're so interdisciplinary to begin with. But we
I
have,
don't know if you know Nick Beltramini.
do I know Nick Beltramini?
Because he heard that I had you as a professor.
Oh yeah, no, Nick is an advisee, good buddy, and he's a great guy. Yeah, I know Nick very, very, very well. Take care. Have a great day. Yeah, no, Nick's a great guy. Have you played with him at all?
Yeah, we're actually in OJE together.
Oh, cool.
The big band. So we
Cool.
have a show next, not this month, the Monday after. So.
Oh, where is it going to be?
Finney.
Oh, well, give me send me an email or something, and I'll try to stop by and catch a little bit of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Take care. That was the most pleasurable one so far. She was great. Anya was like smoking at her. I mean, that was just so chill.
Friendly, like we talked about that.
Yeah, but I mean, interviewing your professor, some people would be like nervous about that, but she was completely there.
Yeah, good like reactions, like not.
Yeah, no, her follow-ups were fantastic. She was totally on the ball, but all of them, they were all good. It's just they didn't have the follow-up questions, Harrison and Bridget, right? Yeah. So much ahead. Here we go. That was it's funny because I felt like it was a good set, but I guess they were organized on that one.
Yeah.
I
It's so good, right?
I didn't know there was a fashion show. What was the fashion show about? Oh, cool. And where was that?
Like in the root room.
Oh, far out.
Yeah. And they brought back an alum.
Oh, interesting. What an interesting idea. No, I had no idea.
My first year, and then like that must be really cool. And then COVID happened, so they haven't been like an in-person one until now. So
Right. There are all these sort of, kind of like annual events at Oberlin, probably many of which didn't really haven't really happened properly in the last few years. You have to kind of reinvent student culture here in this next year, assuming we're like actually out of this mess.
I think there's a lot of events in the spring. Like they're having like the Asian night market. I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
I think also in the same place.
In Carnegie. Yeah. Good space for that. So how's the night market gonna, are students creating stuff? Or are they inviting people in?
Yeah,
Or?
like student orgs, they make the food. It's like food, and then people like go to different tables.
Oh, that's neat.
And there's performances like Kaiko.
That's great.
Yeah.
What kind of events have you guys found to be particularly cool at Oberlin so far?
Well, I like how there's a lot to do. There's always so much to do. There's always an activity going on.
Right.
I also like the clubs here. I just started, I don't know if it's working, but I just started attending the Plum Creek Review meeting.
Oh, neat. That's
Yeah.
the poetry, literary, right?
And yeah, there's always so much to do here.
Right. And what about you, Liz? What have you been enjoying?
I haven't had much time to do anything.
Oh. Yeah. Well, hopefully you got good camaraderie on the softball team.
Do you have games coming up?
Yeah, we play on Monday.
Against two.
I'm gonna be honest, I have no idea.
All right. Welcome. All right.
Hello. Okay, so just a small overview. John mentioned it earlier, but you're going to interview your partner, and then everyone's going to watch and observe. And so then at the very end, we can provide feedback and go over what can be improved, and what you learned from each other. So make sure you have opened the introduction part of the script. Is it open for everyone? It's on the syllabus, and then you go to projects, and then page 10. It just has like the consent for being recorded. And you have time to ask around 2 to 3 questions, around 5 minutes. And the goal is just to get used to the interview process before you interview the member of the community, get to know your peers, and give each other feedback. And so probably going to start in alphabetical order if that's okay. And so.
Oh, and just to mention, you definitely want to be ready to start the recording with your phone. We do have a backup today in case it doesn't work for any of you. I'm recording this on Zoom too, so you'll have that as a backup. But point is for you guys to get used to doing the recording.
And Liz, is that okay if you go first?
Yeah, that's really fun.
Whenever you're ready, you can go ahead and start. Yeah.
Right. Can I not go first? I have some good questions.
That's fine.
Jake, are you ready?
Yeah, so for, what was that for the introduction? You need to,
Right. Do you have it open?
yeah,
So I'm just gonna read that before you start asking the question. And I'll just say like, hi, my name is.
Up to where it says questions, and then you're going to go into your questions.
it'll be like, my name is Jake Jarvis.
Yep. That's it.
Is it this?
No, so you want to be, if you go to the syllabus,
Click on projects.
and then go to page 10.
Should we start with the biographic information or do you have to?
You don't need to ask the biographic information. You're going to read that little intro, and then you're where it says questions, you're going to go into the questions that you developed for your for this particular interview.
All right.
Okay. Is this?
Yes.
Yeah. Make sure you're recording.
Do you want me to go first?
No, I'm good. I'm just like, so when I do my first question, is then I read my question?
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm ready. Hello, my name is Jake Jarvis. Thank you so much for agreeing to participate in an interview for Community Voices. I'm excited to talk to you. As I think you know, I'm recording this interview so I can focus on listening to you rather than taking notes. The recording will not be used by anyone but me or shared with the public without your consent. How would you like to be referred to during this interview? Before we begin, I would like to give you a little overview about what is going to happen. As you may know, we have interviewed many people in Oberlin to develop content for the Community Voices section of the environmental dashboard. Our goal is to learn how members of the Oberlin community are building a more sustainable, just, and resilient community. I'm particularly interested in farmers market. I'm hoping that this can be more of a conversation than a formal interview. Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
Great. My first question is, would you join a club or expo that is on environmental studies? If so, what specific topic would you want it to be about?
I really want to join a club, and specific topic I think would be focusing on the Green New Deal and the law aspect of environmental studies.
What laws would you be interested in studying?
Mainly like wait, can you repeat that, like what laws?
Yeah.
I don't really know the exact laws, but something around, you know, the legal aspect. I don't know any specifics, but mainly the Green New Deal that President Biden and is, you know, working on.
What do you wish to gain from this class, and how would you apply what you learned to your interactions with the Oberlin community?
I would like to gain a better understanding of climate change, because I feel like a lot of people talk about it, but personally, I don't know that much about it, like scientifically or in any other way. I feel like if I were to learn more about like the subject of climate change and how it impacts like communities, that would be really interesting. And what was the second part of the question?
How would you apply that to your interactions with the Oberlin community?
I guess it would help me, you know, be more aware of the impact of environmental or climate change on communities, and that would on like different communities. And I feel like if I get a better understanding of that, I'd be better able to equip it to the Oberlin community.
Great. So since you're a prospective cinema studies major, would you ever be interested in making a documentary about environmental issues?
Yes, I would. I think it's actually been done a lot, but I don't think it's been done necessarily right. I feel like a lot of people who make these documentaries are like, you know, like once film stars like Leonardo DiCaprio. They're passionate about the environment, but it's kind of over the top in a way. I want to get into like the real details of the impacts of the environment and climate change and how that impacts like minority communities. And I feel like that detail is kind of left out in a lot of environmental documentaries, with the director being, you know, a famous movie star or something.
Great, thank you so much.
All right.
Sounds good. Liz, are you ready now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Liz. Thank you so much for agreeing to participate in the interview for Community Voices. I'm excited to talk to you. As a thank you now, I'm recording this interview so I can focus on listening to you rather than taking notes. The recording will not be used by anyone but me or shared with the public without your consent. I would like to be referred to during this interview. Before we begin, I'd like to give you a little overview about what is going to happen. As you may know, we have interviewed many people in Oberlin to develop content for the Community Voices section of Environmental Dashboard. Our goal is to learn how members of the Oberlin community are building a more sustainable, just, and resilient community. I'm particularly interested in the farmers market. I'm hoping that this can be more of a conversation than a formal interview. Does that sound okay?
Sounds excellent.
Wonderful. I'm going to ask you 3 questions. The first question is, how has growing up in Massachusetts affected your view on environmental issues?
Yeah, well, I'm from a very politically similar climate to Oberlin. And I've been educated about, the issue of climate change from, elementary school, and I think most people in Massachusetts are very well educated on the subject, and living on the coast, in Boston, I know that it's something that would affect me or would affect people I know in the future, especially considering like my city is like built on top of a marsh that like sea levels rise, in the flood. So, yeah.
What steps have you seen being taken from that? How do you think you learn from that Oberlin?
I think education is where most of the energy is going to. I think really good. It's one thing to like change infrastructure and stuff, which is all important. But at the end of the day, like you need to have new people that are going to do something in education. And I don't know what the single person from my hometown who's not necessarily passionate, but who's not at least aware that it's like an issue that's going to affect all like everybody around the globe.
When you spoke about education, what would you like to see like implemented more?
I guess the idea that like I guess the idea that something you do affects somebody halfway around the world, and vice versa. Is something I think a lot of people don't necessarily think about. Like you look at the plants, like cleaning and like feeding like a cycle with like emissions and like melting ice caps and like whatever it is. But we don't necessarily understand that like I'm buying something and that contributing to like the growth of a corporation, like deforesting like the living beneath there. So, yeah.
I also saw that some of your interests include music and writing. Do you think it's possible to combine these with your interest in environmental studies? Do you think it's like, and how would you go about doing that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about music. I mean, I'm sure I could. I don't know if I want to. Like, I like the like as a musician, my goal is to bring positivity and connect like human connection to other people, and I don't want to bog that down with heavy issues all the time. But as I really enjoy writing, and I love to be a journalist or anything else about climate change. So yeah.
Great, thank you.
Good job. And then let's move on to lyric.
Okay, hi, my name is Lyric. Thank you so much for agreeing to participate in an interview for Community Voices, and I'm very excited to talk with you. So as you know, I'm recording this interview so I can focus on listening to you rather than 50 minutes, and the recording would not be used by anyone but myself, or shared with the public without your consent. How would you like to be recorded?
What is this one?
Okay. And before we begin, I'd like to give you an overview about what's going to happen. As you may know, we have interviewed many people in order to develop content in the Community Voices section of Environmental Dashboard. Our goal is to learn how members of the overall community are building a more sustainable, just, and resilient community. And I'm particularly interested in the farmers market, and I'm hoping that this can be more of a conversation rather than a formal interviews. Does that sound okay? Cool. I'm going to ask you 3 questions. So my first question is, so you're from Oceanside, New York. How is that influenced your climate change, like living in a small town on the waterfront?
Yeah, well, so my town's like right on the marsh, fully water everywhere, really close to the ocean too, so I know that's a lot of what's affecting climate change can have a really big impact on me. Like I was thinking about Long Island's gonna end up underwater in the next however many years. It's kind of concerning.
Yeah.
But I also took part in an environmental club in my school. Yeah, we did a lot of like recycling, beach cleanups, did some lobbying for that too. It was a lot of fun. So I feel like I learned a lot from moving that small town.
And then what benefits does small town living provide to sustainability, and how might we be able to extend benefits in a more like metropolitan area?
Like the whole idea of fusion energy usage is definitely up more in the metropolitan area. I don't necessarily know how you combat that because there's a lot more people there. And granted, my town was pretty small. It was not small enough that like, we didn't have a lot of interviews to do. So I'm not really sure how.
Well, and maybe like as a follow-up, what are the benefits of like knowing a lot of people and being in a local community?
It's definitely a lot easier to get connected and involved with things because you know almost everyone that's around you. So, I mean, my friend was one who started the environmental club that I joined, and I knew a lot of people that joined up after that. So I was like, this is something interesting. I could try this. And then having those connections with city council and people in charge of government helped us get involved in lobbying. So having those connections with it is really important. We have it over so I feel like we're already steps ahead.
And then you mentioned you like photography and art and stuff. And what's the importance of art in sustainability movements, and how might you utilize those?
I think really seeing the effect that it has helps a lot because you can talk about it all day and someone may not fully understand it, but seeing what's going on and you can't argue with the facts of
Right.
looking at it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hello, my name is Ruthie Colton Schaefer. Thank you so much for agreeing to participate in an interview for Community Voices. I'm excited to talk to you. As I think you know, I'm recording this interview so that I can focus on listening to you rather than taking notes. The recording will not be used by anyone but me or shared with the public without your consent. How would you like to be referred to during this interview?
Jake.
Before we begin, I would like to give you a little overview about what is going to happen. As you may know, we have interviewed many people in Oberlin to develop content for the Community Voices section of Environmental Dashboard. Our goal is to learn how members of the Oberlin community are building a more sustainable, just, and resilient community. I'm particularly interested in the farmers market. I'm hoping that this can be more of a conversation than a formal interview. Does that sound okay?
Yes.
Wonderful. I'm going to ask you a few questions. My first question is, how did your perspectives on environmental justice change from when you were a high school student to now as a college student?
I wouldn't say they necessarily changed, but I guess I got more insight on the topic. Like I went to a very progressive high school, so I was educated about that stuff a lot, but I never really took the initiative to go out and learn about it on my own. So I guess as I got to college, I started being more cognizant of my surroundings and how my actions affect the environment. So I've just been taking note of that.
Is there a way your personal interests to contribute to the environmental change and awareness?
I guess, yeah, that would be possible because I'm a effective law and society major. And I feel like there have been some cases where, low-income communities don't have, I guess, the best water, or there's just lots of trash around. I guess that could help something. I could help with that in the future.
Interesting. Is there an environmental issue that you feel passionate enough to work on or raise awareness about as you get older and settle into your career?
I say definitely climate change because we still have people who think it's a hoax, and if we want to, protect our planet and make it livable in the foreseeable future, we need to take a stand and change that now, so we're not like too late on making any progress.
Thank you.
Good work, everyone. And so now we're going to move towards the feedback portion. So if everyone wants to go around and just say what they learned from their own interview experience, or what they observed watching some other people. Who's going first?
I think it was cool getting to learn everybody's perspectives, and not just like on the subject itself, but how the subject intertwines with their personal interests. That was pretty cool.
Was there something you noticed in in interviews that worked particularly well or didn't work so well? Something that you do differently?
I say definitely ask about where the person grew up and how the environmental studies affected their lives there, like what they learned and how their city or town operates for that stuff.
I agree with you. It was cool, like learning how people's interests and where they're from and affected their view on it and what they want to see implemented. I think personally, I need to work on pacing myself in an interview and maybe not talking as fast. But other than that, I think I'm working.
I would say like I don't want my questions to be like too specific because like if I want it to be like a conversation, I want to be able to work off what the person is saying and maybe have something that's like a question that's like about like a general topic that I can then like tailor to whatever the person is passionate about.
I think it was interesting to see how everyone was kind of impacted by the environment and environmental justice and how like everyone's interests kind of played a role to their actions. I thought that was really interesting.
I guess take time, but I guess just getting used to the process. I would think interview and being more confident in that role. But again, I think practice and I think it's learning. I think Jake had really good follow-ups to get more clarity from the responses. So in your sheet and all the questions you asked are on the sheet, which is really good. There's one here you get from the script that is very interesting to learn more about. And I think they have also had their follow-ups with the local community as well.
All right, I've got a bunch of comments that are both specific and general to the group. I'd say my biggest point for all of you is keep your eyes on the sort of end product, which is going to be content that will be displayed on the screen in Oberlin, and think really carefully about how you might extract information, ideas from the person you're interviewing that's going to be meaningful with respect to the Oberlin community. Like, I think it is great to ask about people's home community, but I think you do want to sort of turn that around, figure out how to turn that around, how to ask follow-up questions that are then, because that's nice because it engages someone asking them about their home community, their experiences, but then figuring out a way to turn that around and ask them about, so, what does that mean in terms of, what you've experienced in Oberlin and that sort of stuff. And I'd say in general to make those questions more about this community, because that's ultimately where the content is going to be directed. I agree with Harriet that for most of you, frankly, practicing that intro script is going to be important, because when you start an interview, that's how you put your interviewee at ease, is by being relaxed. And if it feels like you're kind of like uncomfortable with what you're doing, then they're going to be, it's just like the success of an interview is kind of contingent on everyone just being kind of relaxed. So starting with that is really important, so think about that going into your next interviews. I did think that there was some pretty good content coming out of most of these, and again, I haven't transcribed anything, so what I have here is just some is based on taking some notes, but some examples of the content you might develop from this. I'll just give an example from each of these things. So this is from Liz's interview with Lyric. The idea that something you do affects someone halfway around the world and vice versa is very important for people to understand. That's a nice little tidbit for community voices, that sort of insight, sharing that insight. So that was a good quote. There are actually several from that one, but from Jake's interview of Ruthie, I would like to learn more about climate change and how it connects to the Oberlin community. It's a pretty basic statement, but it's one that I think begins to develop social norms about, hey, this is something we need to understand more about and think about in terms of our own community. Lyric's interview of Liz, working in a local community makes it easier to get connected and involved in things. So that's a nice one. Another nice one from that one is seeing impacts is important to getting people engaged. Okay, so Ruthie's interview of Jake. Here's a quote from that one. At Oberlin, I have become more cognizant of how my actions affect the environment. It's a pretty simple statement, but it's, again, beginning to build good social norms around that. So I think you all did good. Some of you were better at follow-up, being prepared, and I think you all kind of recognize that. Lyric made a comment about that in what he summarized at the end. That sort of like making your questions open-ended enough so that it's not like a factual response you're getting, but they can go in different directions, and then also being ready as an interviewer to sort of listen to them and say, okay, I can pull this in a direction that's gonna get me good content. But thinking about that end result of the content, you want to develop content that is going to be on screens in Oberlin that's going to mean something to people in the larger Oberlin community, and thinking about that constantly in the way you pose questions and in the way you ask follow-up questions. Thinking about that as an end goal of what you're doing is really important. So just to mention, the next steps in this process are, you guys are going to transcribe the parts of this interview that have content in them that you think is going to be useful. So you don't need to transcribe every word that was said in your interview, but you do that within the sheets that you were putting your questions in. That's what those Q&A things are there for. So you can use your phone recording for that. I'll also post these if something happened to your phone recording. And then after that, you're going to be sort of highlighting what you think are good potential quotables in those. And we're going to try to move through this process. If you look at the schedule, we move through it pretty quickly because we're trying to get you set up for your next interview. So this is all kind of, we may actually develop some good content out of this, but this is practice for your next interview with a Oberlin student who you probably don't know and isn't in the class. So that's where we're kind of headed. Any questions? Any additional comments, thoughts? All right.
Thank you guys for coming.
Have a great rest of your sunny Sunday afternoon.